Hey, Father Tony, good to see you again.
Good to see you again, Al.
Still got to do the COVID bump, I suppose.
Yeah, we do. We're still in that pandemic era and everything.
Yeah.
Good to be with you again.
Guided by saints again.
Guided by saints, and this time we're talking about one of my favorite, more recently canonized saint, Saint Damien of Molokai. Some people say Molokai,
right?
But it's Molokai. That's the way I was taught, at least.
Sure.
And I have several personal experiences or connections with St. Damien in an odd sort of way. One, I was blessed and privileged with the opportunity to have Mass at his tomb in Leuven, Belgium, because he was Dutch.
Right.
And I was there for diaconate ordination of Father Philip Bogacki, who was a student at
Pius
High School.
High School, right.
And he was studying in Leuven, Belgium, and Cardinal Dolan was there, and we went to the tomb of St. Damien of Molokai and had Mass there. Very memorable, very beautiful. And then I had the opportunity when I went to Hawaii, went to the island.
So you've been at both places.
Both places, the island of Molokai, to see where he lived and worked and served. And then my uncle was a member of the same religious order that St. Damien of Molokai was, the members of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary. And he always had a picture of St. Damien in his office. So interesting connection, but a wonderful, wonderful saint. Tell us more about what we know about St. Damien of Molokai.
Yeah, Molokai. I've always pronounced it Molokai, but I've never been there, so you have that on me, I'm sure. St. Damien, you know, he's an interesting guy. He lived in the middle of the 19th century, and he was born in 1840. He's only going to live to about 49 years old, but he was, as you said, from Belgium, and he was a brother. And he had a brother in that religious order.
Yes, he did.
That was going to go to Hawaii, and it ended up not working. I believe it was for health issues, but Damien was one of a few people that volunteered to go in his stead.
4 people went over.
Right, and so he went, and he was ordained a priest in Hawaii.
Yes, he was.
So he finished his formation there, but he lived somewhat in obscurity, but there was a leper colony in Hawaii, which you have to remember, Hawaii was not a state yet in the United States.
No, it wasn't.
It's about
it was known as a kingdom.
Correct. It was a kingdom, and it was still 100 years removed from statehood. But lepers, who were, of course, they were ostracized and they were, put outside the regular community, if you will. They were put in a colony in Hawaii, and he had a chance to minister to them. And what a fascinating life. He worked with, among, he taught, he bound their wounds. He saw in this colony, unfortunately, chaos and disruption and immoral lifestyles. People who were basically saying, "I'm sick, I'm going to die. What difference does it make?" And
so he brought order
yes,
and the Catholic identity.
Order and identity to these people. And it really transformed this colony into a little city, like an enclave.
And a home.
Yes, correct. And you said it well. We gave him purpose, gave him identity. That was so important, that they had dignity in the eyes of God. He even viewed himself as a leper, even before he in fact contracted leprosy himself eventually. But he considered himself a leper because he wanted to identify so deeply with these people. And just a remarkably strong man to be able to do that, but also a man of great balance, because he was also a man of deep prayer. He had a devotion to the Eucharist. He prayed the Rosary daily, and he would go off every now and then just to have that solitude and that time.
To fill the reservoir.
Exactly. To give him the power, if you will, the strength to guide his actions in what he did to serve these people. But as I said, he eventually did contract the disease, and I think he lived like 8 or 9 years with it.
Yeah, he worked about 16 years. He worked in the colony.
Right.
And I believe he served with leprosy about 5 years.
Oh, it's 5, okay.
Yeah.
But it's still looking to always still be useful despite that. And that balance in his life between prayer and service, just a remarkable man and a wonderful example of somebody who reaches out to those people who are on the fringe of society, if you will. So, Father Tony, what kind of characteristics come to mind when you think of St. Damien of Molokai?
Well, it's interesting that, he, many in his formation for priesthood, they felt that he was not educated enough, that he didn't have the brains to become a priest, but he certainly had the heart.
Yeah.
He had the heart and a servant's heart. he felt that his role was to be one with the people. So he ate the food they ate.
Right.
He ate the poi with his hand. He dug the graves. He built the coffin.
The coffins, right?
His hands were in everything. And oddly enough, the piece that was sent back to be buried in Molokai, in the colony there, was his hand. He was originally buried there, then transferred to Leuven, Belgium, but they took the hand and brought it back because with his hands and his heart, he led and served. So he didn't pull rank, he didn't serve with authority or top-down mindset or heart set, but rather he was one with the people. He had to have a very compassionate heart,
right,
that he saw beyond their disease and saw them as children of God.
Which couldn't have been easy because leprosy is disfiguring. It's really, can I say, it's ugly. It's really
very ugly.
Yeah.
And but in fact, when Damien was made known to the world, I believe it was one of the royalties of Hawaii. He wanted to present an award and went to Molokai. And when she came there, she couldn't give her speech because she was so overcome by what she saw with the leprosy.
Wow.
And so it's so emotional for him. So he lived and worked among the sick, the poor, and gave them identity and worth and a faith and made a home for them. Yeah. That is so remarkable. I can't imagine how exhausting this was. And he persevered through all of that, even after being diagnosed with leprosy. And there were treatments that worked with him, but he was able to work for 5 additional years with leprosy. And he never quit, he never gave up. So he persevered with a compassionate servant heart.
Sure. What's fascinating is there's another recently canonized saint, Mary Ann Cope, who came from Germany, and she also helped.
She was there.
And she was with him when he died. But in both of them, it's interesting because they're both saints now, but they both did the same thing. She was referred to as the mother of outcasts because she worked with these people who were outcasts. But
and he was known as the martyr of charity.
Wow.
Isn't that great? The martyr of charity, that he was so charitable that he died because of his charity. So Al, what kind of signs and symbols are affiliated with St. Damien?
Well, St. Damien, as you mentioned, is a relatively recent canonized saint. And so because we have photographs of him, we don't tend to see him depicted in art the way we would someone from, let's say, medieval times or earlier. But when we do see him in iconography, he's going to have a lei around his, around his neck.
Hawaiian.
To indicate that he settled in Hawaii. But the simple hat that you would wear to keep the sun off of his face and shoulders. But he's oftentimes depicted too in the advanced stages of leprosy, because to show that he
was disfigured as a result of that.
Correct, and connected with the people that he served. One of the other symbols you'll see sometimes is the symbol or the insignia of the religious order to which he belonged, the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary.
He's pointing to it.
And he's pointing to it or touching it as if it's very deeply ingrained in his heart. So those are some of the symbols that we see with him. Just simply dressed, very, very much of a common man. So Father Tony, how can St. Damien guide us today?
As I said earlier, I had the blessing and the privilege to see the leper colony and went to the island of Molokai. And it's interesting why they chose that particular island to gather all those who were suffering from leprosy. One, it's very isolated.
Right.
Very, very isolated. There's a ridge of mountains, and so we stood on that ridge of mountains and looked down at the colony, and it's on the farthest corner of a peninsula. So it's protected by the mountains, and it's furthest point out on a peninsula. So they were extremely isolated. And in that isolation, when you're sick, you tend to isolate yourself. You withdraw. So they were very isolated on many levels, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And so Damien enters into that isolation and connects them. Connects them to the heart of Jesus, through the Sacred Heart of Jesus, through connecting them to each other and making a sense of normalcy and routine in their life and giving them purpose and meaning, because they built the church. St. Philomena was the name of the church.
Which is still there.
Which is still
in
there,
operation.
absolutely. And so he gave them purpose and meaning. So he went out to those who were isolated. You know, there are so many, case in point.
It's just what we've gone through the last year.
Absolutely, and people feel isolated, you know, and we know just a little bit. We may feel isolated with your spouse or your partner or just your family and everything, but imagine being isolated and being alone, you know, and there are a lot of people like that, people who are in senior care facilities, especially during this time where they've not been able to, you know, maybe Skype phone call or whatever, or Zoom, but it teaches us who's isolated in our community, in our world. You know, a lot of people who suffer from various diseases, depression, people who suffer from depression, people who feel different, feel alone and isolated. So the mission is for us to be a Damien and go out to those who are isolated and say, you have a home, you have a rightful place. I always love that song that we sing. You have a rightful place in this world, in this community. From whatever condition, whatever state of being that you have a rightful place. And I think that's what our goal and mission is, to follow the example of Damien and to help people to feel that they have a place in this world.
And that identity. Yeah, that's wonderful. Just as a side note, there's the famous author Robert Louis Stevenson who wrote Treasure Island and the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He had tuberculosis. He was in Europe, and I want to say England, and he had tuberculosis, and he was told to go to warmer climates. And so he went to Hawaii. And he arrived at Molokai a few months after Damien had passed. But he met Mary Ann Cope. He was there for several days and helped her and saw the firsthand everything that Damien had done. And when he got back home, there was somebody, some snotty kind of guy, a physician, who really questioned the methods of St. Damien and said all kinds of just terrible things about him personally, being disheveled, being dirty, and really making some accusations. And this gentleman had never been there. But Robert Louis Stevenson, who was a heavy hitter at that time, well known, and very, very, important. He wrote a scathing remark about that, saying, "Hey, I was there. I saw firsthand the good that these people have done, and what they've done to help include and to break down those barriers toward isolation, to give them a sense of identity and purpose." And meaning, despite their terrible disease. So he was a real champion for St. Damien, although he'd never met him. I just think that's an interesting side note to the story.
Well, that's the testament to the legacy of Damien, that you see the after effect. That the colony exists to this day. And still runs and operates as one. And so his legacy lives on.
Thanks a lot, Father Tony. It's always great talking to you about the saints, and it was nice to learn more about St. Damien.
Same here.
Yeah, I like that you go everywhere. I think there's a road trip in our future.
Let's do it.
And next time you tune in, we're going to watch or talk about another saint, and that is
St. Anthony of Padua, my patron saint, our parish patron saint, and lots to share about his life.
Yeah, another great saint. And remember, we don't need saints to reach God. God uses saints to reach us.